Whitting Plan Commission meeting for Thursday, September 11th, 2014. It's called to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Secretary, please take the roll.
Commissioner Dorband.
I'm here.
Commissioner Johnson, I am here. Commissioner Powers.
Here.
Commissioner Stylen.
I'm here too.
Commissioner Vito.
Here.
Commissioner Zangara.
I'm here.
And Chairman Rafato.
I'm here. Mr. Jennings, any changes to the agenda?
We have no changes this evening.
Citizens' concerns and comments. At this time, if there is anyone in the audience wishing to speak on an agenda other than the items on our agenda for tonight, please come forward. If none, thank you. Consent items, docket number SCBA 1429, Allstate 100-110 East Palatine Road, appearance approval of a freestanding sign. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Secretary?
Commissioner Dorband.
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson is a yes. Commissioner Powers.
Yes.
Commissioner Stylen.
Yes.
Commissioner Vito.
Yes.
Commissioner Zangara.
Yes.
And Chairman Rafato.
Yes. Items for review, docket number PC 14-12, Harmony Village 1, Fern Drive, minor site plan and appearance approval for a shed and fence. Mr. Jennings?
Thank you. The petitioner, Harmony Village, is requesting, as you said, a minor site plan appearance approval. The existing shed would be shifted, rotated, as you see in this photograph, it'd be rotated to the configuration shown on the site plan, and the fence would be upgraded in conjunction with the same project. There were a couple of minor questions in the staff report, and we can go through those as the petitioner comes on up. If you could just introduce yourself so we can get your name and address, please.
Sure. My name is Joe DeSantis with Universal Restoration Services. We're located at 390 Holbrook Drive in Wheeling, Illinois. We're the general contractor hired to perform these repairs in Harmony.
So if you can explain what's going to happen here, the shed is already up, correct?
That is correct. It was put up some time ago. We were recently contracted, I think I've got a copy of the contract, in June of this year to move the shed in accordance with the current codes for the village. These are the site plans that I submitted. I'm not sure when it was erected, if a permit was pulled. There doesn't appear to be any record of that. The management company has recently been switched that manages the homeowners association for Harmony Village, and they don't seem to have record of it either. So before we move forward with any modification to the property, we felt it prudent to apply for a permit, which is what we're doing now. The HOA at Harmony has received several notices from the village requiring that this change be made, so they've contracted us to do so.
All right. We'll start with Commissioner Johnson.
All right, thank you. Well, I'll go right to the questions that were brought up in the staff report regarding the landscaping that's south of the fence. Is that going to be disturbed?
That will not be disturbed in any way. There's one large mature tree there that shouldn't be in the way.
They also brought up a question about a large gap under the shed. Is that going to be closed so nothing moves in?
Yeah, when we actually install the shed on the concrete pylons, we'll put it as close to grade as possible. If there's a gap underneath the shed, we'll cover that with some sort of fencing material.
There was also a question on the site plan, the diagonal fencing segment.
There's a pre-existing fence that's currently keeping the shed is enclosed in a pool deck area. There's currently an existing fence that's keeping that barrier around the pool per code. And in order for us to make this modification, we have to take down sections of that fence, reconfigure it just a little bit, and then reattach the fence to the shed once it's moved and set in its final location.
So is it still going to be on a diagonal?
There's a small section of fence that's already on a diagonal that will remain on a diagonal.
So
It
to
follows
clarify,
the-
just looking here at this image, then this triangle of space will be outside the fence and the door of the shed will be in this area?
That's correct. The door of the shed will actually be in between the new separation between the shed and the main building. So it'll be enclosed in the space. The shed itself will act as the barrier to maintain a continuous barrier around the pool deck. And before we made these plans, we actually called to confirm with the village inspector, who I don't know if that person's here, but we spoke to somebody with the village inspector's office to make sure that would be okay. The shed is 10 feet in height, which will maintain that barrier.
So I think just, sorry to cut you
Is there a
off.
reason for the diagonal segment instead of just straightening it out?
No, it would just be an added cost to modify that for the community. The particular fence that's there is aluminum.
Oh,
It's
okay.
it's pretty high-end. It's not just a small modification for them.
Okay, that's it for me, thanks.
Commissioner Dorbin?
All my questions has been asked, thank you.
Commissioner Vito?
I have no questions either.
Commissioner Zangara?
Thank you. I think the only question I had was the roof. There was something in the, about the roof being shingled? It's plywood right now, it's going to be shingled?
Yeah, it's constructed of a plywood deck. At some point in time, it appears as though it had a roof. It sustained some storm damage, and now the entire roof structure is blown off. The decking is still there, but none of the covering, so we're going to reapply the standard roof covering.
Okay, that's all I had, thank you.
Commissioner Powers?
Thanks. So are you basically taking the position of the shed right now and like rotating it 90 degrees?
That's exactly what we're doing. We're rotating 90 degrees and moving it just slightly from its current location. In addition to that, we're putting it on concrete piers. Per the current codes for the village, any shed or outbuilding like that needs to be fastened or attached to concrete at all four corners. You can do that by either attaching it to a cement slab or pad or pouring piers and attaching it at the corners.
Was that shed always there or was that added recently, or you know what the history of that is?
I don't know the full history. I can tell you that it appears as though there has been a shed in place at this property for a long extended period of time.
Okay. Mr. Jennings, I just have a question. I was out there today and there's a dumpster in front of there. Do they have a trash enclosure on that property? I mean, I was wondering if the shed used to be like a trash enclosure at one time. I mean, an area for trash enclosure. I don't understand why they're roll off with.
When we were looking at it, we had some similar question. It's difficult to see in this. The dumpster's here, kind of in the dirt or grass. There is concrete. If you go behind the shed, there's a service door to the
I see.
building. It looks like the dumpster is supposed to be in that concrete area on the way to the service door. The main entrance of the building is around the corner, near the front of the building. So, you know, I don't know exactly the full history either, but it looks like it was probably meant to be on that concrete area.
Does that need to have an enclosed area at all?
By the current code, yes, you would enclose it.
Okay.
There's certainly many dumpsters around town that are not enclosed.
All right, I have nothing further.
Commissioner Stalin?
Well, I have a question about, the plan shows, quote, "new fence placement." And looking at the picture of the existing site, it looks like there's a steel fence and a wood fence. Are you going to be adding yet a third fence, this new fence?
We'll actually be removing in its entirety the existing wood fence that's there. The shed itself will become a majority of the barrier, and then the new fence section that we're adding will be the same wood fence that's already there.
It'll be the existing fence just cut down, or will it be a brand-new?
It'll be a brand-new fence,
Okay.
because that location is moving, because when you flip the shed, we have to lengthen that space, so the current fence won't enclose that space anymore, so it'll actually be moving just slightly forward.
Andrew, is there room in between the clubhouse and the shed in its existing position to put the dumpster in that small space?
There's probably enough physical room for it. The concrete, which you can't see in this plan, the concrete ends. There's a slight ramp to it, so I don't know that they could get it past the point where, I would, my opinion of it would be that it should be back on the concrete. I'm not sure why it's off into the grass as it is, but I think that they've got enough space to get it onto the concrete, but I don't know if you're familiar with the area, but I think that the concrete ends right around here and it's got a lip on it. I don't think they'd be able to push it back into here if that's what you're looking for.
That's accurate. It wouldn't be serviceable for trash collection if you were to put it there. But, I mean, there is space available there to put a trash enclosure.
Okay, thank you. That's my only question.
My only question, Andrew, do we know I know we asked the petitioner, and the petitioner's just working for the subdivision. Is this based upon what you have seen, is this a new shed that they put up, replacing something?
My recollection of it is that it was put up new, and then there was a changeover in the ownership and management, I should say. And then, as petitioner stated, the new contractor is picking up sort of where it was left off.
So
I don't
it's
think there is a permit for it
So it was put up new recently?
within the last few years, I believe.
Okay. And without a permit?
To the best of my knowledge, yes.
Okay. And again, it gets back to, we occasionally see these come through, and and I don't know, how did this one get, did the petitioner come and ask for a permit, knew that they had to get a permit?
I'm not sure of the full history of it. I think there was a village notice related to previous corrective action at the shed.
Okay.
And this would be the remedy for that.
Okay, great.
And then that's pretty accurate. I think it's been there for several years. At one point, it was replaced in place, and then at some point, someone noticed that it was out of code and sent a corrective action notice, and then they took action.
Okay, all right, great, thank you. That's all I had. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Dorban, second by Commissioner Powers. Mr. Secretary?
Commissioner Dorban,
Yes.
Commissioner Powers?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson is yes. Commissioner Steilen?
Yes.
Commissioner Vito?
Yes.
Commissioner Tangara?
Yes.
And Chairman Fado.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Have a good evening.
You'll have something to sign?
Eventually. Should be coming. We'll do it. They're not here, not there.
Calling docket number PC 14-13, Deca Restaurant, 401 East Dundee Road, minor site plan and appearance approval for building modifications, Mr. Jennings.
Thank you. The restaurant was in front of you most recently for its signage. Prior to that point, the special use and appearance were here for your review. The question for you tonight and the item for your review, during the appearance approval of the restaurant, which was associated with the special use application, there were a handful of items on the exterior, new entryway, new landscape wall, reconfiguration of the patio to expand the patio significantly, new lighting, et cetera. During that review, the entry feature was shown with duplicate material notes. We are, throughout the process, the material is shown during the grant application and the appearance application. The material is shown as wood to match the existing wood shakes at the shopping center. There was a duplicate note that listed copper as the material. The staff and the petitioner are just, on that particular item, requesting the clarification and just confirmation that that is the material. We have, I believe, a picture of the work underway. So that's what you're seeing here is the flashing, which would be trimmed off, but the wood shakes probably within a year or so would age to match the condition of the wood shakes next to it. So that's one item. And the other item for your consideration and review is the awnings, which were shown alternately on different occasions as a dark brown. This awning, I believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this one, the awning, I think the purpose of this particular drawing was to show the mechanism to retract the awning. But they were shown primarily as dark brown on most of the drawings. The petitioner and the restaurant have elected to request consideration for approval of a, I believe I have a photograph of it, of a cream and then maroon striped awning to add some color. And that is being requested. What you see here is in fact what's being requested. With that, I would hand it over to the petitioner for any discussion.
Anything that you would like to add sir, to what Mr. Jennings said?
No.
Okay.
Well, if I just, 1 minute. First of all, thank you all very much. We're doing all we can to sort of follow the original plan that Wheeling has approved with the facade grant. There's been, changes happen in the field. One of the changes that happened was that, in working with the fire marshal and these awnings, they have to be fire rated. And you can't just put any cheap material up there that acts like an awning. You start to go into a different realm of colors. Then you go into the different fabrics. We can't do a fabric. Fabric A is not going to look good. B is, even though it was part of the original price, we decided to go better. We decided to spend more money and go with laminate. Then the other consideration is landlord. Then you start to go through that process and what would look good, what would look bad. These awnings, we went through an extensive process of figuring out what colors would look good. These awnings, and I have also other pictures of if you want to see, but one picture in particular is, I think shows, it's similar to Andrew's, but the idea is that these awnings are picking up all the colors that are sort of in that design. You have the maroon stripes that match the brick better. You have the sort of beige color that match the stucco at the entry. It's just a better look. Now, Andrew is absolutely right. The drawings that you saw and approved had a different color, but my intention was to show that as an example of the mechanism of how the awnings would look, that they have the flap in front. These are top-of-the-line awnings. that have sides that we can add on to it, that we've purchased for in times of rain, et cetera, et cetera. About the roof. Copper was the first initial sort of design rendering that showed copper. When we submitted for facade grant and for your consideration, I specifically thought that I removed all of the copper sort of reference to it. I even showed a picture of a wood shingle and said, you know, to match sort of, I have an exhibit that shows that. However, I also neglected to remove the word copper, so I'm showing both. On this image, I'm kind of showing, and that's what Andrew alluded to. I'm showing both, copper and wood shingles. And it's true, with time, that will, right now it looks like copper, but that will change with time. The copper is not even a good material to use in this location. Its landlord maintains the property. As soon as we turn it over, you know, we build it, he maintains it. And the idea was to match the development, not stand out, you know, like a sore thumb. So the wood shingles were always part of the project. Again, it was my mistake. I didn't take the note out. So that's the only difference. And we're 99% done with the front. I have progress pictures. I have before and after if you choose to go through these. So that's my sort of story.
Thank you. It's interesting that this picture here, right here, shows you depicting wood, but then you also have the words copper roof. So that's interesting. Anyway.
And trim.
And trim. So I'll start with Commissioner Vito.
Yeah, can I see some of those photographs?
Yeah, feel free to pass them. I mean, that's a draft. I mean, that's a drafting error. That's not. I have a picture of it.
I think the staff also concurred with that. We had reviewed, when we were looking through this, we went back and reviewed the initial grant application, and we found that the wood was repeated on the grant application as well. So the original estimates for the construction also reference wood. So the copper note, while it's there, is usually noted as a duplicate. The exception to that is probably, as Mr. Baseman mentioned, probably the initial rendering. The artistic rendering of it does show sort of a metallic, but beyond that, it's all represented as wood with the copper note.
Yeah, so one of my questions is, were you able to get any of the awnings of the material that you wanted in a flat design, or why did you go to the design that you went to?
Yes. Well, with laminate, we were given options. Well, the first decision was to go to laminate from fabric. You go to laminate and you are given options to have like different colors. And the majority of the time, these awnings will be in a closed position. When they're in closed position, we wanted them to match the brick so they disappear. It just worked out that they had an option where in the open position, they also work with the stucco color and the concrete and the white, brand new concrete walkways, and it just all worked out. Then we matched the stucco to kind of mimic that color of the open awning in the open position. So everything works together that way. With design decisions, you make a decision and then you're forced to, I'm sure you guys have all dealt with construction, you make other decisions throughout. And in this case, we went, my opinion is above and beyond what we were proposing to do. I think it looks a lot better than if this was yellow.
And when do you plan to have them open? When do you plan to close them? Like, why would they be open? Why would they be closed? Is there like
if we are able to seat people outside, we would open them in case there's a, just to hide from wind, from sun, based on the functionality of these awnings. The idea is in the summertime when it's warm outside, but it might rain or it's, kind of drizzling, we would open them to still, sort of service people who are sitting outside. But if it's winter or fall or spring when it's cold, nobody's sitting outside, there's no reason for them to be open.
Okay. And weren't you planning on being open in August or no?
Yes.
Okay, I'm waiting to have a beer there, that's
Yes.
all. I drove by, you still weren't open, no, I'm kidding.
Thank you.
But okay, that's all I have, thanks.
Commissioner Zangara.
Thank you. There wasn't much, I guess my first question was going to be, was the landlord okay with the change? Second, I mean, the rendering, there's more than just those little things with the rendering, but I understand the matching. You didn't go off and do something crazy, so you basically matched the material, and, that doesn't bother me. I kind of would have liked to seen them redo your whole restaurant, then the whole wood thing would have stood out really nice. Let it all age together, but I understand the cost. But otherwise, there isn't much. The one question I did have, though, on the canopies, that rendering, the first rendering, shows more canopies, smaller ones, and then these are a lot bigger. Was there a reason to do that?
So let's sort of go back to the first rendering. The first rendering was prepared for, it was done in the weekend for the special use permit sort of conversation. That's what we wanted to show, what the idea was to have. You can't do a design right away with everything figured out. Then we learned that we need sprinkler system outside. We couldn't just put these awnings without that. We learned that after all the approvals. And I tried to fight Ron, and Ron said no, and I said okay. And the way the sprinkler system works, it benefits if there's fewer awnings. Also, the amount of time it takes to crank one of them open, we decided to minimize, also to minimize the number of awnings, so it's less time to open them up and close them up.
Okay.
Then the spaces between the awnings that have more opportunity for rain to fall through. So we thought we ordered the biggest, pieces of awnings and placed them together.
Okay, as long as you close them during these windstorms.
Yeah, yeah.
But otherwise, I have nothing.
Thank you.
Commissioner Powers.
Thanks. So, am I correct in understanding that you did get together with the landlord and talk to him about the look and feel of this before you put in the grant application? And went to staff saying this is what we want to do?
We met with, the history is that the landlord proposed this, all the Eduardos to Strem's Deli, because it was vacant and there was nothing going on, and he thought it would be a good idea.
No, I'm just saying
I'm just giving you the whole story.
the facade, specifically with the facade improvement and the awning. Did you talk?
Yeah, so let me tell you the whole story. Part of the process is constantly sending drawings to landlord for approval, constantly. Any change we make, we have to send to the landlord, because for obvious reasons, they take over. So the short answer is yes. Landlord is aware of everything that's going on, including the meeting tonight, and he's on board with all of our changes. Yes, absolutely. We're partners in this, and we, with the landlord and the village, we try to be sort of proactive in this.
I guess there's not much I can say, because it's basically all done. It just doesn't quite match the rendering, but I mean, I guess it'll work, but it kind of went from copper to what we have now, so I guess it's workable. I just have a concern as to, we approve plans per se, but it's like, I still see, things being tweaked, and I thought I know plans can change, things can change, but it's just like, I kind of thought we approved something to see it that way, and now I'm hearing that we're tweaking things, and that just got me a little bit concerned, but, you know, the way it is, I guess is fine for now, so I have nothing further.
Thank you. If I may just add one thing, the rendering wasn't part of the pack of the facade grant that was approved. That was not part of the submission.
Well, we approved like a site plan, and we were looking at elevations and stuff like
Yeah.
that, so I was kind of expecting something like that, and the facade changed it, but that's fine, I'm okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Steinle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have any problems with the color change of the awnings. I think that will indeed kind of complement it a little bit and add a little character, I'd say, to the area. You're still covering the same amount of space that was in our original plan with the awnings on the left and the right side of the entranceway, correct? Okay, so I don't have any problems there. You know, I do see copper all over, you know, the F1 elevation sheet, you know, up on the center, down on the side. It says copper, copper, copper all over the place. I'm kind of disappointed that copper isn't there, and what we're ending up with is the exact same mansard stuff that we've had and don't allow anymore. So I would have liked to see something a little bit different that would have maybe differentiated your site a little bit and really drew the focus to your entranceway. You know, I think with the outside seating area and stuff, you're really going to have a nice place, and that would have just added a real nice touch of class. But, you know, it's there, probably not too much we could do about it, so disappointed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you. I too am disappointed with the change back to the cedar shake. As far as the awnings, I had awnings that looked like that on my camping trailer. I think the other design was much classier looking. There's just so many things that have been questioned. Even the columns on one drawing, they're shown as round. Another, they're shown square. Obviously, they ended up being square.
Which drawing shows them round?
One of the ones we had, the rendering, I'm sorry. The proposed exterior rendering with the copper and the 9 awnings shows it as round.
Let me just maybe say it
This was
differently.
part of our package, right?
No.
The rendering went to, I want to say, the board. I believe the village board saw it during the review of the grant. I don't know, the plan commission, it was part of the plan commission?
Yeah, I thought
So it would be
we
the
saw
second
this.
plan commission meeting then? It was available for the second plan commission meeting? Okay.
Yeah, I thought we saw this.
So I know it definitely went to the board, and it sounds like it was dated around the time of the second plan commission
But
meeting.
it was not part of the facade grant.
It was shown as an illustration along with the copper, if that's what you're asking.
Well, the copper, the shape
By
of the
that time,
columns, everything.
By
yeah.
that time, the facade grant application itself actually has the estimate of the construction of each material with it.
The one drawing also shows a sign being put over that archway. Is that still part of the plan? I don't think that was
At this point,
reviewed by us.
no, we haven't submitted for a sign permit for that piece. If we do plan to put it up, but we will submit for permit before. We don't, it's on our list of things to do.
I guess that's it for me.
Our logo changed. It's, the way it's spelled, it's different, the font changed. so-
Right. And you're not putting that on the awnings anymore, because on the one,
The images,
yeah.
we don't know. If we do, of course, you'll see me back here with signage permit application, but at this point,
Okay.
it's, again, on the list of things to do.
All right, thanks.
Freestanding sign.
Commissioner Dorbin?
Thank you. Did you bring samples of the awning? The fabric?
I did not.
Oh, that would have been helpful. That would have been helpful.
I tried to do the best I could. I brought
That,
pictures.
that would really have been helpful for us to see it and know what we were talking about. These are all going to be crank type rather than electric type?
Crank type, yes.
Okay. And I'm looking at one picture, Andrew, if you could go back, I think a couple, where it shows just the bare wood. Oh, keep going. It's, here, this is the picture I'm thinking of.
I don't believe we have that
It was in our packet.
from the
Okay,
packet.
it doesn't look like you have, I'm just curious.
Oh, that was the plot. We substituted this picture for that one in the slides. That-
Okay, I just was curious why we didn't stop them when there was a question? Or did you not know?
No, we did not stop them. At this point, the work was well underway to being this
Oh,
material.
okay.
And our view of it was that in this particular instance, as compared to the awning, we felt that this particular item, there were substantial, they were substantially meeting most of the materials. There was this question of the copper note, and we were going to see confirmation on it, but we felt that there were multiple materials that had the wood shakes clearly illustrated on it. It was more of a question of the duplicate and just confirming it. Our question was more with the awnings than this material.
Okay. I think I would have liked to seen the copper because I think it would have set the whole front of it apart from anything else. It would have given a little bit of distinction, so I'm sad about that. I'm really sad that you didn't bring us some kind of samples for us to look at.
By samples, you mean color samples?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when you picked them,
The images represent the
yeah,
colors.
but when you picked them, you must have gotten samples to look at what they were. That's what I would have liked to see. That's all. But,
Okay.
it's done now. I would have liked to seen the copper, but it's done, and that's all I can say. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess, Andrew, my questions are really more around staff. Because what was on F1, document F1, we had a difference there. So what happens, what's the process when we have somebody go out there and look at it? Is this packet with them?
It would be me, and yes, I would take the packet. I think the issue, just in hindsight on this one, would be when we have a plan. Much of our time at the hearing on this was spent on the floor plan. Looking back on this one, there was an opportunity here for the staff to seek clarification of a couple of details here. The note on the copper, for example. But for sure, when we go out for a facade grant inspection,
Andrew, I can't hear you.
when we go out for a facade grant inspection, we take the grant materials with us. That includes the appearance approval. We go through it. If there's any question of it, we contact the applicant, in this case, Mr. Vaisman. We'd go through everything with them and just confirm. In this case, part of what you're seeing is the result of our coordination of the grant inspection, just making sure that we're all on the same page with respect to the grant. You have an intersection here between the grant and the appearance, obviously, but this particular issue came as a result of an inspection related to the grant.
Got it, okay. Not an inspection related to what was to be constructed.
Exactly.
Okay. Then, as far as the color of the awning, in our minutes, did we specifically say that they were going to be brown?
I don't believe there's a specific mention in the minutes. The image from that meeting
Right.
was this particular one.
So our assumption was that it would be color.
That is our interpretation of it, was that would have been the assumption based on the plan that was submitted at the time.
Okay. Yes, sir.
I just want to point out one thing. On this drawing, there's a note that is talking about being consistent with the plaza architecture, and it's pointing to the shingles. And I'm showing two different colors for the awnings, so I'm not exactly understanding how one would be chosen to represent what you're, over the other. I thought personally that this was a representation of what it would look like, what these awnings are, and the mechanism that how they're functioning, as opposed to exact color. And furthermore, when Andrew informed me that we have copper specified here, I remember specifically that we, to Commissioner Powers' point, copper was gone after multiple reviews with the landlord, and it was to be matching the facade architecture. And I changed those drawings prior to the facade grant, etc. And when Andrew pointed those out, I was kind of kicking myself because I forgot to remove those notes. I was completely, I was shocked myself that those notes were there. It was an error on my part, but no way did we tried to mislead or
Oh, that's
bait and
not,
switch or anything like that.
that's not our, well, at least it's not my belief that you're trying to mislead. The issue is that we approve plans here, and I guess we need to look at that. And something like the words copper, if you don't blow it up, you don't see it. And we were never specific as to the color of the awnings. We made wrong assumptions that we probably need to get better at as we go through these. And, with the help of staff, these things can be pointed out as we go through it. Normally, we see differences, and it reads here that this is a proposed awning type. It doesn't say anything about color. And you're right, it does read that connected to existing building facade designed to be consistent with plaza architecture. But if you look at that drawing, that roof outline isn't consistent with the building. So there's inconsistencies in the consistency that you think is there. So anyway, I guess my final statement is that we then have to do a better job, we as a whole, looking at these. I would have never, ever seen the copper wording. I saw the picture of the wood, and I thought, yep, okay, it's going to match, and that was it. So, any other comments? So, we make a motion on this. I'm okay with the color of the awnings, and again, though, no, that's enough said. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Your second?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Vito, seconded by Commissioner Stylin. Mr. Secretary.
Commissioner Vito,
Yes.
Commissioner Stylin,
Yes.
Commissioner Dorban,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson, I'll go with yes. Commissioner Powers,
Yes.
Commissioner Zangara,
Yes.
and Chairman Rafano.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Andrew, for steering the ship. Thank you, gentlemen.
Print this for you, and we'll be out, are you going to be around the site in the next, well, tomorrow? Okay, I'll be stopping by and just wrap up what I need to do there. Okay. Sure.
Were you here in December?
Yeah.
I'm looking at their December
Good.
submission. We never saw copper plan.
Do we have to swear you in? Probably.
I'm going to go up front, though.
Okay. So you have to read that.
And read what?
The back, the thing.
Oh, just the announcement. Hey,
Portfolio?
print another one with,
It will go on the website.
so he puts it in the right box.
Yeah, the kitchen and everything.
Keep this one in.
Private dining.
Sign it underneath. Give that one to.
You know, one thing, when Beverly was
First time for that one.
I didn't expect this. To me, that was a bad, the biggest compliment.
Yeah, she's pretty good at her job. She's very good, actually.
She had a slow comments, but
No, but she's excellent at her job. She really is.
Opening date?
Okay, calling docket number 2014-16, Village of Wheeling amendments to Title 19 zoning. Mr. Secretary.
Just a second, I gotta get to that, since we didn't have any agendas. Docket number 2014-16, Village of Wheeling is seeking amendments to Title 19 zoning of the Wheeling Municipal Code, including the following. 1, exterior building material requirements for non-single-family districts. 2, application and review process for planned unit developments. 3, general requirements relating to pavement in residential areas. And 4, the fee schedule for public hearings. Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Secretary, Mr. Jennings, would you please raise your hand? Do you swear the testimony you give tonight to be the truth?
I do.
Thank you. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. Before I get into this, I think what I'm going to do is just a brief overview on where we are with the amendments to the zoning code in general and what I think we're trying to get out of tonight. I believe that we have amendments that are fairly clear on 4 out of the 5 of these items. So what I'd like to do is go through those first. The 5th item is the building material standards. I think that we're possibly still in sort of a workshop stage with that item. While I'm hopeful that we can have a productive discussion on it, I think that in all likelihood, the other 4 items will probably be ready for a recommendation. Depending on how that one goes, we may request as a staff that the commission consider making a recommendation on 4 and continuing the docket to allow us to do additional research on the 5th one. That being said, what I'd like to do is go through the other 4 first and just make sure that we're that the code language that we've proposed here is meeting the expectation from our previous discussions.
Okay.
In some cases, we haven't had a previous discussion, so it'll be the first read on some of these. Front yard paving, maybe what I can do is open the report here. The front yard paving, the purpose of this, we recently added a section to the code to address the fact that front yard paving was essentially unrestricted. And we had a need to sort of preemptively restrict front yard paving so that you could not pave your entire yard and use it basically as a parking lot. We added a restriction. We felt that we had researched it adequately. We took through multiple scenarios and calculations to see how it would work. I think in this case, what we would consider this to be is we overshot slightly on that number, and I think that we need to, in order to handle a fairly typical issue that Wheeling residents run into regarding the width of their driveways, I think that we need to take another look at this one and go ahead and increase it slightly. So what we're suggesting is instead of a 30% rule, a 40% rule. This will help people who have lots that are in the 55 to 65 foot range still comfortably park 2 cars. This is something that I think we probably had 4 or 5 in the last 2 months that had this issue, which is a pretty good number in a short amount of time. So are there any questions on this?
Can you explain a little bit, driveway shall not extend beyond the front plane of the house? So is that like off the side where there would be, you couldn't see any buildings like to the back lot line or anything like that?
So when we originally wrote this, probably, I would say now, maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, there were a couple of things that we were trying to address. You could build a driveway past your house to park vehicles in your backyard as well. So what we were looking to do by that regulation was restrict a rear yard parking. It came in the same section, but the purpose of that one was to restrict rear yard parking.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions about that one? Commissioner Stanley?
Andrew, when, as far as a driveway, is there a side yard setback that's also included in this percentage calculation? I've seen a lot of driveways go up to the property line, and in some cases, the neighbors butt their driveway to the property line as well. Is that part of the 30-40% calculation? Does it?
It's not part of the 30 to 40%. The part of the side yard that's inside the front yard is, so this is specifically the front yard paving. So there is a point at which you do have a front yard, side yard overlap at the edge in the corner. The issue that you're talking about where you have a driveway, we look at it more from a reasonable construction standpoint. So if somebody were to build a brand new driveway, can you construct a driveway on your property without entering your neighbor's property? Pretty difficult if you're at a zero-inch setback. So typically we try to have people back it off a foot or so. It's not an issue that comes up that regularly. We do have some driveways that are effectively shared. There's rarely anything formal on the residential areas where people have using it as more, it's just how it's developed over time. But on a brand new driveway, we typically look for about a foot off the property line to make sure that they can construct it without entering someone else's property.
But that 30 to 40% is still the total width of the front yard, not including, including whatever the setback requirements would be.
Yes, so if you look at, this here as the entire front yard, we would look at it from side to side here. So that 30%, or now 40% as we're proposing, 40% of that width.
And where did you find that our existing driveway size might be too restrictive? What area of town?
When we first started getting the permits in where people could not park 2 cars side by side, I would say we had, they were scattered actually. It was the lot width that we were running into was 55 to 65. So we had that range of driveway size. We had this summer's permits for the 55-foot lot up to about a 65-foot lot, regardless of location, really, was having difficulty getting two cars. When you have two cars side by side, you need, unlike a parking lot where there's the stripe and, you know, the two doors can sort of open on a driveway, you need that same space, but you also need space to step out onto pavement so you're not walking into your own grass. So that was the issue that people had. It was just not enough breathing room between the cars, and where they're opening their door on the driver's side of the left car, they're ending up in their yard. So we're trying to address that.
A far cry from some of the original houses that still have just two little concrete strips that
Strips going up, yeah.
your wheels fit on.
Yeah,
So
don't see that much.
I guess 10% of, a 10% increase on a 50-foot lot width would be 5 feet, which would give you 2.5 feet on each side. Sounds reasonable to me, so thank you.
Any other questions on that one?
Is there any issues when it comes to cul-de-sacs? Because, I mean, the front yard is a lot smaller. I mean, I'm just asking if there's any issues with
Yeah,
that.
the front yard calculation when you have a wedge-shaped lot, usually on a cul-de-sac, sometimes we have some curved streets where we get that too. The measurement of the front yard width is an arc instead of a line segment. So we can work on that. I think that for the most part, I wouldn't say that we've had an issue with it. If we run into it, I think we have some ability to make an interpretation of where exactly we measure their lot width. We'd probably measure it at the building setback line, which would be the most lenient end of their 25-foot setback.
Okay.
Any other questions? Next one, Andrew?
The next one, number 3 here, mixed-use district development standards. Let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger. The purpose of this came out of our joint Plan Commission and Board meeting from May. The Commission and the Board discussed a confusion about when exactly building material standards are set for a plan unit development. Through that discussion, village attorney advised us that the language that was in the code was inappropriate, and this would address that. The purpose of this is to clarify that the building materials are to be labeled for the purpose of the discussion, so that at the initial concept review of a plan unit development, the petitioner's application would be required to list out the building materials on the elevation drawing so you can see what part of the building is proposed to be what. And then the Plan Commission and Board could provide guidance to the petitioner so that when they do submit a formal application, everyone has the same expectation as to what should be submitted.
You want to pop to that wording?
Everybody read that? So the new language here would be the proposed primary and secondary materials shall be labeled on the elevations provided with the concept plan submittal, so that the Plan Commission and Board can provide direction prior to the preliminary PUD submittal.
Any questions?
In no way does this seem to imply any kind of approval of those plans, right?
That is the purpose of this.
Next one, Andrew.
We'll come back to this again, but this does have some overlap with the building material regulations themselves. So we'll be kind of revisiting that. The next one we had, on to the next page, fences and screening. We had a request for clarification on this particular section of the code. For one, we had confusion about landscape screens. There's an exception that you see here for backyard fences, which is intended for properties that abut a major street to provide some additional privacy. The strict letter of the code would otherwise say that you had to have a very low fence on your backyard because it is also a front yard technically. So the purpose of this is to allow exceptions for special circumstances. The community development director can allow an exception in fence height where you have a special need like that. This also clarifies that a landscape screen can also be permitted to be taller than that if it's also in that same location. Any questions on that item? It looks like there's a question.
Yeah, I just, screening, so screening is a hedge.
Dense shrubs, yes. Hedge.
Is prohibited within 25 feet of street or, okay, so over 3 feet. So for instance, on the corner of Dundee and Schoenbeck, St. Armand, northeast side of the street, there's a shrub there that is right across the street from you, is over 3 feet. So that is not really permitted.
And one of the things that we're adding here is unless specifically permitted. So if there is a way in which it is specifically permitted, it would be okay. The general rule of thumb is that landscape screen and shrub, and this section actually should be corrected. This all screening over 3 feet. If we're changing the other section to be 4 feet, this should probably come up to 4 feet as well. But the purpose of this is to keep the vision triangle clear. We have that kind of redundant and repetitive in the code where we're trying to make sure that when you're coming into and out of a street, driveway, et cetera, that you don't have anything obstructing your view.
Okay, it's just interesting, because I think,
Well, the village Dundee Road fence does the same thing.
yeah,
on the other
I know,
side.
I was just thinking that same thing.
You know, you can't see somebody coming down the sidewalk unless
Right.
you pull beyond the stop line.
Right. So,
And
I-
IDOT up over by Walgreens on Schoenbeck has their box planted
right, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
that's more than 3 feet and you can't see what's coming.
Interesting. Okay, that was so this should actually read 4 feet?
To be correct, and we'll make a note of that this should be 4 feet.
Okay.
It would be consistent with the next section that we're looking at.
Any other?
I have one question.
No. Commissioner Stadlin?
We're increasing it from 3 feet to 4 feet outside of the triangle area?
In the next section here, we are looking at this. If you come down to the opaque fencing and landscape screens, first of all, we're adding a heading to this so that it clearly applies to both fencing and landscape screens. The next part of it is this. We're going up to a 4 foot instead of 3 foot. We have multiple requests that deal with this. Frequently have to tell people no to this one. So it's one of those items that a fence that is otherwise not obstructing view, we did not see any particular reason that you couldn't have a fence or landscape screen go to a 4 foot height. Again, provided that it's not obstructing view of a driveway, et cetera. And the purpose of that then is to add this new section that clarifying once again that does not allow you to block visibility. So this entire sentence here is about that.
I guess my only concern there is once you get out of that triangular area at an intersection and go down a lot line, that property is typically bounded by a sidewalk. And when you start allowing shrubs to grow higher, they typically grow wider as well. And when we have the 1 foot setback, most of the shrubs that we have today, even at 3 feet, are growing into the sidewalk area or come close to it. And if you let the shrubs go higher, my guess is the shrubs are going to grow more into the sidewalk area. Now, I know that we have rules and regulations that say that that can't happen, but I'd rather have something in this section where it says it's got to be 1 foot, shrubs have to be 1 foot off the sidewalk. I'd like to add an additional clause in there that says, and the shrubs, should be planted a distance that will not allow them to grow into the whatever proximity of the sidewalk, rather than have some other code in some other section of the ordinance that people may not read.
The primary issue, the primary function of those other sections is really an enforcement function. It gives us the ability to cite someone for obstructing the sidewalk. It gives us actually, as the village, the ability to maintain shrubs that overhang the right-of-way, in this case, the sidewalk portion of the right-of-way. Certainly be fine to have something similar to that here. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. The other ones, though, they do provide us the enforcement ability as well. So at the discretion of the commission, we can certainly add something like that.
Well, I'm going to pick on my complex right now, because if you said a foot from the sidewalk, I'm not sure that my bushes are a foot from the sidewalk, although they do not overhang the sidewalk. So if we had an ordinance that said they cannot overhang the sidewalk, I don't think 1 foot is relevant. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, sure, and I agree with that. I don't agree with the 1 foot, because
Right.
some shrubs may need 2 or 3 feet, other shrubs may need 6 inches.
So as long as they don't
I'd rather have the ordinance say that
They don't.
the setback should be proportional to the distance that the shrub would
As long as they
naturally grow
don't
to.
overshadow the sidewalk. Now, that's the other issue is, and I sent Andrew some pictures of not only Brookvale's bushes, because the outside bushes are a buffer, and the inside fence is there. So my suggestion was, as long as there's a fence existing and it doesn't impede somebody coming in or out, then the bushes should be the same height. And then I also took some pictures of Lexington, and those are buffer bushes there. And if we only allowed them to go to 4 feet, those people have no buffer at all. I mean, fortunately, we have the fence, and now we have the bushes in front, that have been there forever, but that's a buffer. And I want to make sure that that's written so that somebody who has the similar situation can allow their bushes to grow up a little higher to get a better buffer. Does that make sense? What I'm
Yeah,
saying?
because
Yeah, it does.
there's plenty of people in my subdivision whose hedges that abut roadways, or the sidewalk that abut roadways are 8 to 9 foot high. So do we expect them to come in and trim them down to 4 feet?
I think that's sort of the purpose of this, whenever rear side lot lines abut major highways and roadways or other unusual circumstances exist. That's the CD director exception that I was referring to. We just want to clarify that landscape screen, so a hedgerow that's acting as a buffer, can be maintained at a greater height to provide some privacy and additional separation from the traffic.
But I guess, Andrew, if somebody comes in and says, hey, my hedges are 9 feet high, and some inspector, I guess, said that, like they did for Pam, you gotta cut your hedges down to 3 feet or
No, that's what the ordinance said.
4 foot,
Right.
and now I got to go to the community development person to get a reprieve to allow my bushes to, isn't he going to approve them if they've been there for 20 years?
And the other thing is, I think the other greater issue is not so much their height, but as long as they're maintained. I mean, I think that, you know, we need to have some kind of consistency, I agree, but, you know, if they're not maintained, they're going to look awful anyway. So how do we address that?
Well, most of it's addressed on a complaint basis. The maintenance of shrubs is, you know, there are sections elsewhere, landscape code, the Title 12, trees and vegetation covers that one. The section that relates to obstructing a sidewalk comes out of a public right-of-way section. So there are multiple other sections. I guess the question that I'd have is, you know, what the purpose of the regulation and the location of it in the code. So if they're all grouped together in a similar fashion, I think from an enforcement standpoint, we're covered. So if the question is really more for the convenience of the public of finding this, my opinion is that when you have somebody overhanging the sidewalk, they aren't looking at a section of the code first to find out if they can do it. I think you're really truly just looking for enforcement.
So how do you enforce something like what Terry is saying, that a neighbor has, their bushes are 8 feet tall, but they keep them maintained? Are they going to be then told they have to cut them back? I mean, if I'm confused, I'm sure other people will be confused.
Sure, you have to ask for the exception to be given it. And the trigger for asking for the exception very well could be a notice of violation. And that's fine. I don't see a problem with that. I think that if the Village of Wheeling were to receive a complaint or an inspector were to initiate a complaint, one or the other, and go out and investigate it, you, as the person receiving that notice of a violation, have time. There's usually, you know, a 14 or 30-day period listed to resolve it. And resolving it could very well be you call the phone number on it, find out what your options are, and in this case, what we're referring to, receive the exception.
Okay, so that means that once this would go into effect, even though those bushes have been there for 50 years, we'd have to come in and ask permission to go above 4 feet tall. Is that what you're saying?
No, on a complaint basis.
Because that's confusing to me. I mean, if you're saying that we'd have to get an okay to have them grow that high, even though they've been there for 50 years, then does that mean once this is passed, that we would have to address the village with a letter to get approval?
This is less restrictive than what's there now. The proposed clarifying language here would be less restrictive than the current. It is trying to clarify that landscape screens are also available. They can also receive the same exception that fences do. So yes, it's confusing. There are, I'm sure, multiple scenarios that we haven't thought of on this, but the language that we're proposing should be less restrictive, should offer a homeowner an opportunity to receive the exception that's already on the books for fences.
So if they're already existing, then they're grandfathered in, is that what you're saying?
Well, but this language has been there, except go to,
This here.
no, 113 is where we're at. The next,
Where are you?
right here. You added the light blue, but I and double I were there before, except we're changing it now from front 3 feet to 4 feet. Those were already there, correct?
That's correct. Those were there, going from 3 feet to 4 feet. We've added the word landscape to clarify that we are talking about both things. I mean, it's in here, but we're just trying to be as clear as possible that we're talking about screening of multiple types, fences, landscaping, et cetera, walls. That is in here. We're trying to be more explicit about it. Along with that, the section before,
Right.
The exception for unusual circumstances, we're also adding some language to be totally clear that this applies to landscaping as well as fencing. And the only reason that you would typically have this issue come up is on a complaint basis.
Right.
Somebody has called the code hotline and says, hey, I've observed that my neighbor's shrubs are 12 feet tall. I got a ticket for that last year. What's the deal? And that's where they come from.
Okay, but back to what I was hearing is that on I and double I, is that why do we need something in there that says 1 foot from the property line? Why can't we just change that word to be not to overhang the,
Sidewalk at full
yeah,
maturity.
right, at full maturity instead of the 1 foot?
An additional sentence to say landscaping,
No, it's on I, little I, within the front yard setback at a height not to exceed 4 feet above the finished grade of the ground, provided that it shall be located at a minimum of 1 foot behind the property line. Why does it have to be 1 foot? It could be 6 inches as long as it's not over the sidewalk.
we have used the 1 foot primarily, you're talking about the fences, you've got the ability to install a fence, the ability for
This is
you to
fencing, okay.
snow plowing, snow
All right.
removal.
So you're putting fencing with landscape screening, and I could see 1 foot for fencing, but not necessarily landscaping.
We can certainly, if there's a consensus to add something, we can absolutely, I don't think there's any issue with adding something that says that consideration for plantings should be made so that their mature size is, something to that effect, that they be planted far enough back.
Do I see some head nodding there?
Yes.
Yes.
And the intent of that would be, before I write, I think we can certainly come up with something.
The intent is for landscaping, not so much fencing. Fencing, I can understand being 1 foot in.
Well, but I mean, I think the situation is the same. If somebody's going down a sidewalk in a wheelchair or in a bicycle, their elbows may be out over the edge of the sidewalk. They should have a clear area.
Yep.
Most of our sidewalks are actually a foot off the property line anyway, so you're talking about 2 feet at this point.
Okay.
But we can absolutely add something. Landscaping should be placed so that it will maintain the appropriate setback at maturity.
Can we go back to page, I believe it's 12? Yes. It says limitations, and it's 3C.
Yeah, I was going to go back to that one, too.
In the other pages, it says 4 feet. Here, it says 3 feet.
Yes, that's.
Did you mean for that to be 3 feet or 4
We
feet?
can go, I think there would probably make sense to go to 4 feet on that one as well.
I had a different question on that same item. The reference to the center line of the street or alley, 25 feet from the center of a 4-lane wide street? It doesn't seem to be a good reference point.
It's probably not. No, it's not, I would say this is probably a carryover from a fairly old section of the code.
When everything was 1 lane wide?
I think we've done in almost all of our alleys at this point, too.
Is that when they had dirt roads? Possibly? 25 feet?
The language is actually kind of similar to what's in the vision triangle definition, so I would guess that it probably came from there, if I had to guess. We don't do much from the center lines anymore. There's very little that's center line reference now.
Because I'm thinking, St. Armand is basically 3 lanes wide.
Well, but this says 25 feet of street or alley center line.
Or street.
Or street, yeah, that's
So-
25 feet,
So
yeah.
25 feet from the center of St. Armand.
Right, yeah, that's true.
Be the middle of the road. We could do something to this section to just simply reference the upcoming,
It would seem like they
The
should
vision triangle.
reference the curb on each side of the street.
my guess is that this is intended to be a vision triangle reference, and we can
Well,
swap it out.
I'm sure that's what it is, but when you say the center line of the street, not
Yeah, we can
not
go,
necessarily the lane.
we can swap it out and just,
Yeah.
if we think we're talking about the vision triangle, let's just say
Okay,
vision
cool.
triangle.
Great.
I got a question.
Yes.
Can we go to page 113 and pull up that paragraph 8B again? It says, opaque fences and landscape screen should be visually open. So does that address, I would have concern about density of like a landscape screen. If I were to put in a row of yews versus a row of dogwoods, I mean, yews would be a lot more dense than dogwoods. I mean, you can see through dogwoods somewhat, but you can't see through yews. So is that to say, if somebody were to come to you for an exception, you would look at, how dense something that would be? How it would be, or that's another?
Not likely. This comes from, again, it's a visibility. There's a little bit of a subjectivity to this, but yes, we're talking about making sure that you can see. What we'd probably do is sit in a car in the driveway or street and see what we can see.
Okay.
Anyone's on this one?
Any other questions on this one? Yeah.
Take
there's
5
some-
before we move on to the next one. Take 5
Pardon?
before we move on to the next one. Is that okay?
Take 5?
If we could.
Sure.
Thank you.
5 minutes. 5 minutes. Andrew, would you like to continue?
Thank you. I would. We are at the public hearing sign deposit. This is a minor issue. We discovered that tracking the deposit is not cost effective. We spend a great deal of staff resources tracking this deposit. We do not have a record of a single sign being lost, but if we did have to replace a sign, it would cost less than tracking that sign. So tracking the deposit, each deposit costs more than replacing the sign. So what we'd like to do is not track those deposits anymore and handle it as a fine. Damaging a sign,
okay.
you'd be subject to fine. And the fine would then be equal to the amount of the deposit. Just, it's flipping the requirement. Not a major issue. Are there any questions on that one?
No.
So the next item that we have is the building material discussion. I'm going to flip back to the PowerPoint for that one, if you just bear with me for 1 second. Sorry about that. Let me go super fast through this. Okay. We have just a couple of quick notes before we get too deep into this. What I'd like to do in this, I have a slide that's got some of the questions that we'd like to work out. We have provided for you a revised draft revision to the code. We had a workshop discussion on this. I think that one of the issues that we ran into here was clarification of what it is we're attempting to do. So before we get started, I just wanted to do that. The staff has proposed this in response to confusion on the part of the Plan Commission, the board, and the staff to some degree as to how to interpret this particular section of our code. What is required in terms of minimum building material standards and how exactly to interpret that section. What we're trying to do is not necessarily just modify what's in the code right now. We're replacing it. The first section that we're attempting to do this with is our residential multifamily design standards. So that would be townhome buildings, apartment buildings, condominium buildings. So our goal in this is to try to have the code be clear and have it accurately convey the expectations for building materials and building design to a potential builder, to a petitioner. So part of that is identifying what the village expectations are and then writing up a code that conveys those clearly. Some of the issues that we're trying to resolve in this are confusion about what is masonry, what is not masonry. If the intention of the village is to require a certain amount of brick, our suggestion in response to that would be to use terminology that is clearly conveying that the expectation is brick. So part of what we're doing here is trying to show, both in the code itself and with some images, how this can be modified. I think that we're all on the same page in that it does need some type of modification. It has been confusing for everybody involved. I think we're all in agreement that something needs to be done with it. And this, I think, is a process. Like I said about an hour or so ago, I don't think we're done with this. If we do get some direction on it, I think that we can be done with it relatively soon. But this particular one, I think we do need additional discussion on. So with that, this is a little smaller than what I thought, but some of the notes that I had in this were the difference between what we currently have in the code and the new language that we're proposing. Again, we're not necessarily tweaking it, we're talking about rewriting it to get rid of what was confusing instead of just modifying it slightly. Part of that is how we handle the calculation. There are a few different areas that we're suggesting garage doors, for example, are completely not part of the surface area in our current code, and then they go into the surface area in the proposed. So it changes the calculation, simplifies the calculation, but changes it. Brick versus masonry. There are industry standards for what is masonry that differ depending on which organization you're dealing with. Generally speaking, masonry is going to include stucco as long as the stucco is applied to another type of masonry unit. Most of the industry standards do not specifically list cement fiberboard as a masonry product. It is a cementitious product. So if the desire is to require a brick material, one of the suggestions that we've talked about here is say the word brick and then specifically address the other materials that could be either in or out. We've added some language regarding secondary materials as well as prohibited materials. So what is considered a secondary material would be very specifically spelled out. Something that's prohibited, we're trying to be explicit about that list. Then we also offer a review process for innovation. Products that we haven't thought of, if somebody has something they like to build, they can come propose it and get an interpretation on it. Just this next one, the bays, is really a question of the calculation. Bays are taken out of the calculation in the current code. Under the accent material, we put them back in. It's again, when you look at the numbers, this 75% on one calculation is not 75% on the other. We're going to show you some graphic examples of that. And then the last thing that we were taking a stab at here was two different options for construction. One is a primarily brick building where you select a single brick and you have some ability to supplement that with a secondary material and some accent trim material. And then the other one is basically a mixed material building where you pick a single brick, but then you also pick another single material or combination of another material so that it's not primarily brick, but it's a short list of acceptable materials to partner with. So as we go through this, there are some questions that we wanted to try to figure out. Again, what's the expectation? What is the best way of conveying that expectation? We didn't want to lose in this the section that's immediately in front of this, which talks about the other aspects of architectural design, articulation of the facade, treatment of the windows, trim, detail, the headers on the windows, sill work. So there are other items, the cornice work. So there are other design elements that we want to make sure we're not neglecting. And I don't know if we've done that enough yet. And I would suggest that some of the items that we've got that we'll have graphically shown here are really trying to refocus on the other aspects of architectural design. Again, going back to calculation, is the calculation method that we're looking at the simplest way to do it? Another way to do it would be height. So what portion of the height of the building is a certain material versus the surface area calculation. Then the last question there I had was, do we need to consider multiple regulations, or is this single regulation acceptable? We've got multifamily buildings are permitted in multiple districts, R4 district as well as our MX districts. Is there a need to have a different standard based on different locations? So we do have a couple of photographs that might be useful for that as well. And then at the end of it, looking for direction for the future, do we want to model the commercial industrial airport after it, or are they just fine as is? So with that, the current code language, so this is just a quick overview of the calculation. This is just looking at this building. You've got a material that appears to be vinyl, possibly a cement board from this angle, I can't tell. But you've got brick up to the top of the first floor, then above that it's an alternate material. So by the current code language, garage doors are completely removed. They don't factor in at all. They're not part of the building. They're not part of the top of the the percentage, and they're not the top of the part of the bottom of it. So they're completely non-factored. So this elevation, which is the front, ends up being 33% brick. This would not meet our code, of course. 33% brick, and the other side of the building, because it's got no garage door in it and has this additional height, ends up being 40% brick. So this completely ignores garage doors. The way that we've currently proposed it, in your packet this week, the garage door is basically grouped with whatever's right next to it. So the garage door is part of the wall, so up to the area, you basically just rectangle it all in, add it up. This side ends up being 50% brick, and this side's still held at 40%. It's just for clarification purposes, not saying necessarily that one's right, one's wrong, but when you look at the numbers, this is what they mean.
Andrew, before you move, I hate to ask this, but the windows on the 40% brick side, are windows included in that calculation, or are they excluded today?
Windows are basic, the way it is now and the way it is in the proposed language, they're absorbed into the material next to them.
So you would like garage doors to be absorbed
Treated
that
like windows.
exact same way?
Treated like windows, right.
So you're just taking
Boxes.
Boxes.
Simpler boxes.
yes, boxes and saying that you're going to have 75% of a structure, really is what you're saying is, if we use 75% of a structure has to be brick.
Right, and this is all open for discussion. Again, there's two options. There's the brick building option, and then there's the mixed material option. But under the 75%, this is a brick building, it's 75% brick.
It's going to be a
Even
lot
though it's all windows and garage doors?
yeah, so
And 2 columns of brick that,
This gets back into the other aspects of this, which is other elements of architectural design. And we're going to spend some time on that too. Hopefully, this will all come together. 2 sections combined that end up producing the building. And again, we're talking about buildings that require individual review. Every single one of these requires site plan and appearance approval. But when a petitioner looks at the code, we're trying to convey the expectation. They know that they're going to have to come in for site plan and appearance approval, but this is how we tell them, this is what you can expect out of this review.
So, yeah, so it's easier when you just make it a box and say whatever percentage we use and whatever wording we use, there's no subject of interpretation.
Right.
In that.
Right. The whole purpose of this is just, we're talking
Yep.
calculation, just talking numbers.
Yeah, okay.
The rest of it gets into
Right.
how, there's more to it than just that.
Continue on.
So just some examples, architectural. Most of the examples that we have are not in Wheeling. I threw this one in. I was driving by today and thought, well, this is a pretty decent example of a relatively new building that is not in an MX district. This is in an R4 district. We roughed this one out. This side of this building, the front, is roughly 25% brick. And this side of the building, if you look under here and on the edge over here past this bay area, is about 40% brick. So just to get a handle, this is outside of the MX districts, an example of a relatively recently constructed and approved building.
So in this case,
Go ahead.
in this case, because there's no, I would assume the backside has got the garages.
Backside has the garages in this one, yes.
So using our current calculation and including garage doors, you would then see a lot more brick on this building.
If you were to, just in terms of the garage doors, yeah, it would have an impact on how much brick you would need to meet the same number.
Right, so there would be more.
Right.
I like that.
One of the reasons I put this one in here is I felt that it's a good example of architectural interest on a building that is not a high percentage of masonry. It has front porches, balconies, It has a protruding feature. It has a gable end that doesn't match the direction of the slope of the roof. So you've got architectural interest created by things other than the building material. So you've got shadow, additional roof protruding from the building. So columns, there are some other things on this. There are bays that are also constructed of a non-masonry material. So there's a lot going on in this building, and we're going to go through several of these buildings and kind of talk about some of the design elements that that they have on them. This is going off the bottom a little bit. This one is an interesting one in that it would meet the code in the MXT either way. So right now, the code in the MXT district is for 100% brick, 100% masonry, I should say, and it excludes the bays. So this, if you take the bay out of the equation, these are a metal panel, I believe, metal bay. You take them out of the equation altogether, so they don't exist. This is a 100% brick building. Under what the proposed language would be, this is an 85% brick building, and this is an accent material. So this is an example of a building that would meet current code and the proposed code, but the calculation, of course, changes slightly. So this one has an 85% brick, and by our proposal for how we deal with accent materials, this would be a 15% accent. Also interesting because it shows, you've got stoops, a little bit obscured in the shadows over here, but you've got stoops, there's change of level, there's other things breaking up the facade. You've got the bays themselves break up the facade. You have headers, stone headers. You've got a cornice detail here. So there's a horizontal band that runs across, which is just a brick of a different color to highlight the bottom of the window line. So there's some other architectural decisions that were made on this that I think make it a more interesting building. This is a commercial building. I think it may be one of the only, well, no, we have a couple of other commercial buildings in the mix here, but this is a commercial building. The reason I included this one is that it shows sort of the alternate. You've got the brick building, and then you've got the opportunity to do a brick with an alternate material, which lowers the total percentage of brick, but the list of materials that you can use for the second material is very limited. So you're looking at a true stucco, stonework, cement fiberboard. There's a very small list of acceptable materials. This is probably a 50-50 building where you've got a 50% brick base. There's stone at the bottom below the windows, but it's basically a 50% brick building and 50%. I'm guessing this one is a hardy board if you got close enough to it. But also interesting because the plane, the entire building doesn't sit on the same plane. It's got 3 or 4 different front planes to it. It's got dormers protruding from the roof. You've got bracket detail under the eaves. So there's more going on to this building than just the building materials. Any questions on this so far? Just keep plugging along.
Andrew?
Yes.
But you said there would only be 2 materials allowed?
We've got the idea of the mixed material building.
You got the brick and you got the upper siding stuff.
Yeah, I think the way that it's phrased, the way that it's phrased right now, you could combine several materials, but it has to be, out of that, it still has to be a primary, when you add the brick to it, your primary brick is a single brick type, but then the rest of the other 60% of the building, you've got the short list. So stone, hardy board, that sort of thing. So I think you can mix it. I think this would meet that.
So the stone base that appears around the front of the building, that would be allowed as a accent material? I mean, I just don't want to get too restrictive in what we're trying to do where we eliminate a lot of opportunity to have some of these nice eye-catching things.
I think that's part of what we were attempting to do with a building like this is illustrate how it's possible to produce an architecturally attractive building that is not this is nowhere near 100% brick. It has other details, so it has articulation of the facade. You've got an interesting roof material that you can see from across the street. You've got interesting windows. There's significant trim on the windows. You've got stone headers. You've got a soldier course header that's kind of hidden in the shadows here. So I think this is probably one of the best illustrations we have of the importance of the other section of our code. These two sections are together, material standards and then design standards. And I think that we've kind of lost, over the last few years, we've lost sight that this is required as well. You are required to include some of the architectural design that you see here. This apartment elevation, if you, sorry, go ahead.
But if somebody came in though, I mean, and it didn't have the articulation, it didn't have the bells and whistles, but it did have the bottom layer brick and the top layer vinyl siding. That was it. Nothing more, nothing less. Still meets your requirements. How?
Vinyl, no, the vinyl was taken out of that.
Okay, then let's
Yes.
say it's hardy board that looks like vinyl.
The way that our code is written is a little bit subjective on the other elements. I can pull it up on the screen here in a second, but the way that it's written is a little bit subjective. It does say that you are supposed to include trim, you are supposed to include windows on each elevation. So there are some basic requirements. Some design guidelines are a little bit more specific. They'll say that no more than 50% of the facade shall be on the same plane, which means you have to articulate up to 50% of the building. They'll limit the width of an expanse. No expanse of a single plane can be greater than 40 feet. So there are some very, very prescriptive codes out there where you say this is the form that you're going to meet. You're going to meet this, that's it. You're going to have a horizontal band somewhere between 16 feet and 20 feet. There are other, you can get as specific as you want about this.
Are we intending on doing that so that we have all the niceties done, but do we still have those limiting factors that prohibit somebody from taking the easy way out? And I hate to put it that way, but.
Well, you do have the ability, because every single one of these is going to be reviewed individually. You have.
I hear you, but when somebody comes in and says, well, your code says I can do this, it's awful difficult to say, no, you have to do more. I'd rather say you can do less than requiring them to try and do more.
That is, there's two sides to that. I think, when you have something like the other section of the code where we talk about trying to sort of quantify what's a subjective thing anyway.
What looks nice?
Exactly. The other side of that, though, which when you talk about something like a building material standard, you do have some very set requirements. When there are very set requirements on the other end of it, you do end up with a code that can be restrictive enough that it discourages people from asking. So while I definitely understand the commission's perspective of that I'd rather have them ask for a reduction, it can get to a point where it's so restrictive that they don't ask for the reduction. They just move on. They'll say, well, this is too much. Can't meet this one. I will try the next town. And I think there's a medium of conveying design expectation versus conveying such a strict design expectation that it doesn't appear to be easily met. Or reasonably met, I should say. That makes sense? Mm-hmm. This is one that is, if you count the garages in, this is probably in the 35 to 45%, maybe 40%. There's some pieces of this that go up to the second level. So just as an example of, if you are talking about the multi-material building that has brick on it as at least 40%, this would probably meet the 40% code for brick. getting back to architectural design elements, by our current code, this blank wall technically should not be permitted. This is not in Wheeling, but by our code, this blank wall technically should not be permitted. There's no articulation on this side of the facade. There's no trim on the windows. There's very little architectural detail outside of the balconies themselves. But just an example of all brick, no detail. This is a townhome that has it has architectural interest both in the change of the roof line. It's got a mix of materials. Would not meet our code as it is today in the MX districts, but does provide architectural interest. There's multiple windows. It's broken up with porches, and it's got the bays. So this is a type of building, again, would not meet our code, but
Based on what?
the total percentage of brick. In this case, you might actually, I take that back, you might actually be able to make the interpretation on the bays that they're in that, exemption for bays. But in total brick, if this element is calculated, it's not brick.
No, there's still a lot of brick there.
Still a lot of brick there, but not 100%. Probably not 75% actually on this one if you add it up. Again, I don't know. I don't know if we have a minimum standard for how far a bay has to project before it's a bay, but this probably make it. This would if bays are just taken out of the equation, this would probably make it then. This is an example of a brick townhome. The windows are probably undersized, and you have larger expanses of brick. The trim detail isn't proportional to the size of the building. So although there's articulation in the facade, you do have expanses of brick, lack of sill. You have some other missing architectural detail. The garage in this one dominates this street. The trees aren't obscuring much of it, so it's a lot of garage door. This is a larger building, an apartment condo building. It has a full brick facade. It has, and I'll go to another shot of the same building in a second here, but there's a lot of detail at the roof line. It has sills and headers on every window. There's a horizontal band before the top floor. It has a horizontal band above the bottom floor. There's a lot of articulation in the facade. You don't have any expanse of brick here, probably over, I would say, 30 feet on the same plane. This is a side shot of the same building. Again, you get the shadows from the balconies. You get the articulation of the facade itself casts a shadow. You've got stonework, detail, a base material. They've landscaped the base of the building. There's a lot going on in the design here. Two buildings, both apartment condos, both probably would meet. They're at least 90% brick. There's an obvious difference in terms of the architectural detail on the building on the right. There's shadow lines cast by the projection from the balconies. This actually steps out a little bit. You've got this stonework comes up over the entry feature. It comes up to show you that that's the door. So you're highlighting some of the features of the building. Just a lot going on, again, in terms of attention to detail. Another apartment condo building. This one, I think, shows you again what it does for the building to break up the facade by not keeping too much on the same plane. You've got cornice detail, balconies again. The headers are proportional to the windows. You've got another horizontal design feature here before the top floor. So you're starting to see sort of this repeat and pattern of buildings. And again, we're talking about a subjective view of architectural quality, but a lot of these are traditional elements, and that's why they're being picked up on these buildings. This is an example of a mixed-use building. It's an infill project within an existing downtown area. You've got sort of the traditional Chicago recess. You've got everything down to the gooseneck lights. You've got the wide headers. They've broken this up into each storefront has its own building design, although in reality these are probably totally connected behind that wall. They're not true lot line buildings, but a lot of attention to detail on this one. And one more. Sorry, go ahead.
If you go back to that picture and say that it's really one building, but it's designed to look like multiple buildings, then how does that meet your criteria for having one set pick of brick? You see what I mean?
Sure, that's a good point.
And again, I don't want to be so restrictive that somebody would read it and say, I can't build this building.
Yeah, it's true. They could certainly read the way this is written. They could certainly read it and come to that conclusion. Another building similar in terms of it's actually right around the corner from the same building over here, but significant attention to the detail at the breaking up the retail storefront part of the building from the residential side. Again, you've got three different, in this view, you've got three different planes on the same facade. The balconies break it up as well. You've got a vertical element breaking up the bulk of the building as well as horizontal elements. This was an example where the side of the building is not comparable to the front. Our code is intended to give each building side, each elevation is intended to have equal treatment. This one does not show that. You have one which has a fairly significant detail, and the other side is kind of open. This one's interesting again. I have probably a better shot that shows this, but you have multiple brick elements. You have no headers, no sills on this side. Well, minimal headers and sills. And once you take the balconies out of it and take those things kind of stand out a little bit more. This one doesn't really convey what we're trying to do. It's a little bit washed out. You have, in this section, you've got three different types of brick in one spot, which may take away a little bit from some of the other traditional, you've got the eyebrow type arched windows. You can't quite see it in here, but you've got painted ephes that's deteriorating. It's in a location where there's water coming off the roof, and so it's damaging some of it. Again, this picture doesn't quite do this justice in terms of the number of materials. It has a lot of traditional design elements, but then it's also got an issue of multiple colors. The Ephes Bay area, this area, we're talking about maybe 5-6 different colors, and then 3 different types of brick, all in the same spot. This is a front and side view of the same building. You have on the front view, you have this dark brick vertical element running up and breaking up the building into thirds, whereas on the side, you have sort of a repeat of that, but the lack of balconies and lack of the articulation of the facade exposes how different the tones of these bricks actually are. So you've got same brick broken up 2 different ways, and the effect, I think, is visually more appealing on the other side.
It's like Neapolitan ice cream.
Oops, too far. So kind of where we're going with this is with the expectation that we'll have an additional meeting on this. What we're trying to figure out is right course, wrong course. What elements are we getting closer to the commission's vision on, are we still not providing the village vision on some of these things? I think we're open to suggestion. We can work with whatever you'd like. We didn't receive very many suggestions of particular buildings to go out and try to model after. So what we've done is come up with these sections, throw them out there, see if we're getting closer.
Comments? Mr. Stanton?
You know, I was here during the time when we were moving towards and increasing the amount of brick masonry material. And I think back then, our goal was to try to improve the durability of materials that the new buildings were being built of, right? Before they were wood siding, you know, and some aluminum siding, whatever. And we were trying to strive for a lot more durable materials. And I think we just gravitated back then towards masonry. Masonry is more durable. And I think, you know, I still have a very great concern about building things that are made of durable materials, but I'm not exactly sure what they are anymore. And, you know, the appearance difference, to me, I look at a building that has a real blank side, and then I look at a building, the same building that has articulations and nice stuff, and say, what is the real cost of doing that building, right? They're the same materials, they're the same stuff, just in different proportions. One has a wider expanse, one has, you know, a little narrower expanse with articulations. And my guess is you could build it front, or you could probably build in some articulations, and probably doesn't cost that much to do it if you're talking all brick or whatever the substance is. And the more you can bust it up and use different materials might actually give a product that is cheaper to construct, but is just as durable. It may look 100-fold better than, you know, the best solid brick wall that you can possibly get. I don't know if I'm explaining my thoughts correctly.
I think that's one of the things that we're trying to address here, but go ahead.
No, I mean, I just don't know how you can specify that, though, in terms of legislation requiring somebody, you know, it's like saying, I want you to build a building that looks nice. Well, what looks nice to me and you are all completely different, so, you know, but I think to me, it still is durability. I want to make sure that the materials that we pick to do a building are the most durable materials that...
But to that point, it's also, and I think it was when Dunkin' Donuts was in here and we were talking about the hardy board, and we wanted the thickness, but it really depends upon how it's constructed. I mean, because you could have two brick buildings next to each other, built by two different contractors. One cuts corners, and the percentage of water and cement that they use, and the other one doesn't, and they may look the same for the first year, but then in 5 years, the one that cut corners is going to look terrible. But they're still brick.
Exactly.
Right. So I'm agreeing with what you're saying, because But even then, brick doesn't necessarily translate to durability,
Exactly.
right?
That's why I say, I mean, you know, buildings that we have done with the precast concrete, to me, are perfect examples of you can make it look like anything, but it's still, I hope, a very durable material, probably, you know, the most durable you can get.
Again, though, it's how it's constructed, too. I know you're looking for some direction, Andrew, but I'm not certain. Some of the things you had listed there are good, but again, it gets down to what do we want to use as materials, I guess? Is it maybe it's more so of what can't be used instead of what can be used? Is that a...
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I think probably a month ago, you sent us some examples of what they were doing in other villages, and to Chairman Rafato's point, I haven't really looked in our code in depth, but do we actually specify in our code what materials we won't accept?
Yes.
Because I know a lot of
Currently
the
and
examples you gave us, the villages flat out just say, we don't accept these materials, but they also do say we will accept these materials. And do we go into that type of depth in our code?
We do currently, and the proposed language does as well. I think in that area, I think we've probably added a few more things to the prohibited list based on the feedback that we've gotten over the years. I think that we're trying to refine that. It is in the code right now, but there are some materials that we're suggesting get added to the prohibited list.
So then it almost comes down to like a numbers game in a way, percentage, but I guess if we had the feel of the durability of the material, I guess, and it was acceptable and you could see how it was being used, I guess it would be okay. It's just hard to come up with anything like that until you really see what something looks like.
And I guess what else, what do other villages do? Like Arlington Heights, Buffalo Grove, Palatine, Prospect?
I've seen, what I've seen, I haven't seen any, I'm trying to think of the durability, what sort of workmanship standard you get. The closest you get are, on the municipal side, you'll have these types of certification of proper installation. What we're suggesting with the cement fiber board, if there is a difference between quality installation and poor installation quality in terms of the product's durability, there's a big gap. We're suggesting that having certification of proper installation technique be part of it. That we've seen out of other municipalities. In terms of other, I can't recall other workmanship type of certification. Of course, a builder can always require, a general contractor can always require, when they subcontract out for the exterior of the building, they may have something else to go back after that person for the repairs for a certain number of years. But I don't know that the village necessarily would have something to do with that. It's more of the person who paid for it has a warranty.
So does this kind of like proceed, or, proceed like, if we got to get this done, and then you guys can start looking at like how the look and design, like the look and feel of what the town center is going to be like, and what materials we could use there. Is this kind of like a predecessor to that?
It's not directly related to it. Sure, you'd have some. We would take the R4 section if we have similar changes in the commercial section. The town center is going to be an MX district. The MX district language already pulls from the R4 and the B3. That's the standard for MX. You have currently on the books a requirement that specifies a higher standard in the MX districts. That's one of our questions: is do you have a need for a different standard? But each one of those projects that's going to be in the town center area is going to be a PUD by code. I think what we're trying to get is predictability for the process, predictability. Exterior building materials are one of the big factors in the cost of a project, and we're just trying to, I think, make sure that everybody's expectations are the same. The village is conveying an expectation, someone can read it and know what's going to be expected of them.
Okay. Andrew, is there some kind of impartial expert we can have come in and talk to us about this stuff? Instead of us saying, we don't really know what's durable and what isn't, and...
I can check. There are, in the world of city planning, there are a handful of organizations. One runs out of DePaul. There's a municipal design review network. We can check back over the last couple of years and see who they've had as speakers on.
Does that make sense, Jim?
On
Get somebody that really knows the stuff?
the relationship
Makes
between
sense.
code and design.
Because every contractor's going to tell you he's the expert.
But I have a question, right? I mean, in all the pictures that we looked at, the brick buildings, are they real brick, you know, the 4 inches wide by whatever? Or are they face brick? Are they look-alike brick? Are they precast panel brick? It looks like brick. What do we want? Do we want it to look like it's brick, or do we want it to be the actual thick 4 inches by 6 inches by whatever it is? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And what is more durable? Are we trying to get too specific in what we're?
Well, and that's why I'm saying maybe we need somebody that really knows this stuff to explain it and let us ask the person.
Again, and I'll go back to, and we've discussed this section of our code ad nauseum. It seems since I've been on the board for 10 years, and I think we've, at least 5 or 6 times we've discussed this. So what do other villages have for their code specific to this, irrespective of durability? What do they have in their code?
So,
And I know you've probably given that to us in the past, right? If we've
the
discussed
recent
it, right, yeah. So can we bring those up again? Tell me what month it was, and I'll go back and look at it, because
I can resend it. I can put it on your iPads
Yeah.
to sync. So what we gave you, fairly recently, we provided building material standards from a variety of sources. So some of them are from if you go back to what we originally sent out, we tried to put a disclaimer on it. Some of these are coming out of a building code. That's where this particular town decided that they were going to put their material standards, building code. The other one, some of them are coming from zoning codes. Some of them come from a specific set of architectural design guidelines for a district inside a town. So they have varying sources. So that was one of the disclaimers we had, is the source varies by town, but a lot of the same elements are going to get repeated. You've got minimum standards, you've got the architectural element, sort of the design standard in addition to the building material standard. So you've got different towns handling it different ways. One of the reasons that I put that disclaimer on that was that when you have a very specific code that said, when you get back into the form of the building, this building shall be built so that X% of it meets the building wall of the adjacent building. You read things like that, even if you didn't have the title page of it, you know that it's an infill You're trying to meet the character of an area. If we do not have that, you're not trying to design to meet a specific existing character. I don't know that you necessarily need to repeat some of the very specific things, otherwise you're going to end up with Long Grove. You know what I mean? You're going to end up with exactly what Long Grove has if you take that section of their code and very specifically try to transpose it. So that's my only real word of caution with those. We've got Wilmette, we've got Naperville. Naperville, I think, was probably the most thorough in terms of, it's almost like an encyclopedia of, a graphic encyclopedia of architectural
that,
design.
yeah.
So we can put those on your iPads, you can take a look at them.
I just don't know where to, unless somebody else does, to have, besides what Commissioner Johnson said about, having somebody come in and talk to us. I'm not sure what direction I can give unless. Oh, I know anybody on the board. I just don't know.
Here's the guy that deals with it every day, right?
Materials have changed so much over the years too. They've progressed like everything else. They've gotten better. We've seen that. So it is wise to have someone talk to you that explains the materials to you. Everyone remembers EIFS stucco 30 years ago when they just slapped it on a building and it all got ruined. Now it's installed the correct way. It's a decent material. So it is hard to say. It's very hard to say. I saw they have a precast building in Naperville that is, you go by it, you think it's a brick building. We watched it go up. They changed the colors. It started out as a flat precast building and it turned into a beautiful building. So it is very difficult to say what's right, what's wrong.
But even this one sentence in the Wilmette standard caught my attention. They said prohibited building materials, exterior insulation finish system, or IFAS, or drive it, and non-masonry stucco products like artificial stucco, synthetic stucco, vinyl stucco, latex stucco. How many different types of stucco are there? And do we have to list 16-inch masonry cement fiberboard?
Well, if we go down the path of what's excluded, yeah.
And I think that's kind of why I asked the question, because I looked at that and a lot of that was detailed. That's why I kind of asked do we have anything in our code that specifically mentions that we will not allow this to be used, or we will allow this to be used? And but that's tough. Like Paul says, if the way stuff evolves, then what are we doing? We're constantly maintaining a list. When something comes along, we have to revise our code again because now this material came through. It's really a tough call.
That's I think I can read it off here. Any material not specifically listed within this section may be presented for consideration during the design review process.
Yeah, you have to have a catch-all like that.
So it's the innovation clause.
Andrew, my question is, what's the impetus for the change? Have you been seeing people come to you basically saying, we can't meet your standards because they're too high, we're going to go somewhere else?
Yes, so we've heard that. Similar, you weren't here for the parking discussion, but we had a similar issue with the parking where the comment that we were getting from the development community was your parking code is on residential buildings is restrictive enough that we actually cannot afford to build a building here. We'll have to build it elsewhere. So we heard that a few times. And they were, sometimes they were from developers who we had worked with on other projects. They said, just FYI, you might want to look at this. So there was some of that. Some of it we heard in terms of the building materials. You've got the builders themselves coming to us occasionally, construction coming to us occasionally. So it's a combination of things. We've heard that the petitioner, I don't know if you recall this, but from the Northgate Crossing development, when they came, there was a discussion on the cement fiberboard, actually several discussions on their use of cement fiberboard. And so both for the indoor parking and the cement fiberboard, they had explained that the rent that they can get is not affected. The building's going to cost more, and it's not going to have any impact on the ceiling of rent. And there's a point at which, if you separate those numbers too much, they just can't build the building anymore. So that was among the considerations for this. But a lot of it was just general confusion. We would have a project come in, and there would be a confusion about what the material was. Is it okay? Is it not okay? And that's a lot of why we're working on this now, is just clarification.
And the codes that you've seen that are, I guess, more like innovative, I would assume Naperville is kind of on the cutting edge of it, just because there's been so much development there over the years. I mean, are those more in the direction of where you're trying to go, or?
I don't think that, from a staff, I don't think we've tried to do anything other than be more clear. I think the staff perspective on this, I think, is to, we're trying to make it clear when we feel as though the village standard is reached the level of restriction that is discouraging to development, we'll let you know. We do feel that way now. We feel like the standard in the MXT district, based on the feedback we've gotten from the development community, is we feel like it has reached a level of restriction that is discouraging to development. So we'll certainly continue to, as we go through this, if we feel that that's the case, we'll let you know. But that's, it's only one part of it.
Okay, thanks.
So what I'll do then is I'll take the items that we had, put them on your sync folder. With regard to this, just generally speaking, I think that there's clear consensus for additional discussion on this.
Yes.
As it is right now, if we were to do a recommendation on the other items, do we have a consensus on the other items? Modifying the section to be clear about
Yes.
the landscaping. Landscaping shall be placed so that it is clear.
I'd like to see something on that 1 foot setback change, though, a little bit.
So that it shall be clear, 1 foot at maturity. Is that?
Yes. Yep.
The building materials then we would bring back.
Yes.
If there's consensus, we would do as a condition of approval on this recommendation, the addressing the landscaping, so that at its mature size,
Yep.
It would be clear of the 1 foot setback. We would, that other section, with the alley and center line in it, we would rephrase that to refer to the vision triangle as well as the 4 foot height. And then we would request that the building material section, specifically to the R4 district, that the docket be kept open. So we'd be basically making two motions. One, to recommend the items in the report listed as 1, 3, 4, and 5, and keep the docket open. The second motion then would be to continue to a date certain, and that date certain at this point, I would probably push to the middle meeting in October. The October 9th meeting conflicts with the Toast of the Town?
Taste of the town.
Taste of the Town.
Taste of the town, yeah.
When is that?
It's October 9th at 5 to 8, I think. So our regularly scheduled meeting that week would be at the same, they would overlap. So if we were to do the second meeting in October.
But then, that would be technically, then we, the 25th is, we have a meeting next week.
We have a meeting next week. The agenda is light. I don't know, based on what we've talked about tonight, that we could bring this back that fast.
And then the 25th is,
25th is likely to be canceled. We have at least, we have no other public hearings scheduled. We could continue to the 25th.
Right.
For an additional discussion.
I won't be here, but that's,
So it's really up to the commission. We could, if we put it to the 25th, we could have a meeting that night.
because if we have it on the 25th, then, and the 9th, most likely,
If a majority of the commission intends to attend the event
Right.
on that night, then I don't think that we would schedule the meeting knowing that we wouldn't have a quorum. We would cancel it, I should say. It's already scheduled.
so I would probably shoot for the 25th. So you're going to be here on the 25th?
Of September? Yes.
Okay.
But are we going to have somebody here?
No, well,
Because otherwise, what are we
We'll
going to
work on that.
accomplish?
I mean, we can work on that. You know, the commission, you'll have at minimum the handful of codes that we've already sent you. We'll resend that, we'll package it up. I'll try to spend some time putting that together. What we may do actually is push our packet out. We have one item scheduled for next week right now that's very, very minor. It's a video rental kiosk. So it's a very minor review. So we'll have time. So what we could do is actually put the packet out on Monday at the end of the day, give us more time to compile the materials. So you can have like an additional workshop on this next week. So you'd be better prepared. In the meantime.
Well, that'll give us more codes, but that still doesn't answer the durability thing.
Yeah, in the meantime, what we can try to do is see if we can find somebody who might be able to talk to you. But the codes themselves, if they have been produced with input from those very same experts,
Yeah.
you know, they'll give you some
okay,
guidance.
so right now we need a motion
I'll make a motion for 1, 3, 4, and 5.
on docket 2014-16.
Yep.
With the conditions as previously listed.
Right, with the conditions as okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Powers, second by Commissioner Stylin. Mr. Secretary?
Commissioner Powers?
Yes.
Commissioner Stylin?
Yes.
Commissioner Dorband?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson is yes. Commissioner Vigo?
Yes.
Commissioner Zangara?
Yes.
And Chairman Rafato?
Yes. And then a motion to continue?
And this could either be to next week to pick up the discussion, if that's the intention here, is to just keep it going.
Right, let's do it next week. And
Okay, just put it
motion to
on.
continue to September 18th. There, motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Brooke. I know you have an event on the 25th, so don't worry about it. Don't worry about coming. You don't have to be to all these.
I can't be there.
Pardon?
I have a presentation next week, so I won't be.
So 2 weeks in a row you won't be here. That's fine. Approval of minutes, August 28th, 2014.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Okay, great. Thank you. Other business, Mr. Jennings?
I have no additional other business.
Great. Okay. Commissioner Stylin?
Oh, boy.
Oh,
You would
boy.
call me. You know, I was a little bit disappointed tonight with the DECA presentation to hear the petitioner tell us that after we approved his plans that he was told by the village that he would not be allowed to do what he wanted to do. And, you know, that, for whatever reason, if it's the fire department and the durability of materials or whatever, you know, the plans that we approved were obviously not complete, and that bothers me. And just to let you know that there was a lot of talk about the copper roof and whatever while I was reviewing materials. I went back to our packet that was given to us in December, and there is absolutely no reference at all to any of the copper material at all. So somehow that got intertwined into...
It was on the drawings, though.
Not on the ones that were in our packet on December 18th. At least that I could see. What I would like to see, though, in the packets when they come forward before us, it'd be nice to, you have that section of previous actions on the property, and it details out the ordinance numbers that were involved in the changes. It'd be nice to have the PC, SBA, you know, docket 10- whatever numbers so that it'd be a little bit more easier for us to go back and try to find some of the stuff. It was difficult to locate that.
You had the same issue. I tried to.
So that's one point. The other interesting thing is I happen to be looking through the Northwest Municipal Council's transportation plan and came across the fact that they have in their transportation plan laid out all the bike paths that they want to see or we want to see in Wheeling. And then I went to look at our active transportation plan and happened to notice that our plans are kind of similar but a little bit different. But in both cases, they happen to have a bike path going down or very close to Vera Lane. And I thought with the Wheeling streetscape plan that we're trying to do to look for areas to put parks, that if we have a bicycle path going down a street and we happen to have a nice big open area that doesn't have a way today for the bicycle path to traverse the property between Vera Lane and Vera Lane, that might give us some impetus to look a little bit closer to doing something on Vera Lane to make the bike path happen as well as improve the character of the area. So 3 suggestions. That's my only comment, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Zangara.
Basically just reflecting that great job with all the cleanup and everything with the storms we had. Our neighborhoods and streets and electricity all came back relatively quickly, so I just appreciate everyone's effort on that. That's what I have. That's all I have.
Commissioner Dorbin.
I have nothing, thank you.
Commissioner Johnson.
Nothing this week, thanks.
Commissioner Vito.
Nothing, thanks.
Commissioner Powers.
A couple quick things. Andrew, if you go to DECA tomorrow, I'm not sure what we approved. I was over there today and looked at the patio area. I did not see a railing. So I don't know if we approved a permanent railing in the patio area or something that was portable, but if it is something to be permanent, I know they were close. I guess just make sure that something goes in there, whatever needs to go in there goes in there.
DECA, I don't recall a railing in the end on DECA. I can
In
double
the
check.
patio area, definitely was a railing.
I can double check. I
And
don't.
I saw something on the board meeting on that one, that there was some kind of question was raised.
I'll go
about
back
the
and double
fence.
check.
The other thing is, I was driving in the area today and I saw another video gaming banner for one of the establishments. So, other than, the one that I've seen, a new one I've never seen before, do we have any kind of restriction of video gaming banners that, like, this was like a new banner that can be hung by establishments? Are they allowed to do that?
They're considered temporary signs. If it's a banner, it's considered a temporary sign if it's outside of the building. If it's in the window, it's subject to the window sign regulations. If it's a banner outside, it's considered a temporary sign, and there'd be some pretty significant limitations on it.
Temporary, and eventually that would have to be removed?
Yes.
Okay,
If it's outside of a building and it's
okay.
on a banner, yes.
I have nothing further, thank you.
I have nothing either. Mallory? Brooke? No? Thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.